Alrighty. Welcome to the January Hatfield Museum and History Society Community Program, and welcome to all those who are watching on Facebook. In accordance with the bylaws of the Society, as this is the first meeting of the year, before we get into tonight's program, we will have a very brief annual meeting of members. So at this time I'll call the meeting to order, and as has been our custom, we will now observe a moment of silence in memory of those members of the Society that we lost in the past year. And they are member Gail Walter, charter member Shirley Wireman Finnemeyer, member Ronald Gottschall, member Donald R. Cressman, longtime member Ethel Stoneback Heffelfinger, and longtime member Richard C. Lewis. So at this time we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, we'll have the reading of the annual report of the Board of Directors for the year 2021. And just a slight delay while we change microphones.
All right, this is the annual report for the Board of Directors for the year 2021 presented this evening. The Board of Directors is pleased to report on another great year of preserving and promoting the history of Hatfield in the year 2021, our 30th year. Membership in the Society for 2021 was 199. The year 2021 started out again as a challenging one as we continue to struggle through the pandemic. The Society continued to present interesting and informative programs on Hatfield's history for its members and the community throughout the year, although mostly on Facebook. A modified annual meeting of the Society was held virtually on Facebook in January 2021, followed by a program titled Holiday Homicide, which told the story of the 1960 murder of Hatfield Borough resident Janice Decker. The community programs for the rest of the year were, in March, the 12th annual This and That program. In May, the program We Will Remember Them, a tribute to the Hatfield men who lost their lives in service to their country. In September, the program was Our Own Little Corner of the World. And in November, we finally presented an in-person program titled Agricultural Hatfield. Although the Hatfield History Museum opened to the public in August 2020, the Society decided to wait until October 2021 to hold a grand opening celebration open house. The two-day event brought out over 160 visitors to enjoy the museum's displays. The museum also showcased its new basement display during the open house and offered guests a preview of the new planned Hatfield History Garden located behind the museum building. The History Garden will feature a number of items from Hatfield's past displayed in a garden setting with flowers and landscape plantings, as well as a bench for relaxing. To help fund the new History Garden, the Society began making custom engraved donor bricks available. These bricks will be used in making the walkway in the garden. The bricks will continue to be available, and anyone interested should contact the Society. It is hoped that the work on the History Garden will be completed by the summer. Many people from across the country are continuing to enjoy reconnecting with Hatfield's history through the Society's Facebook social media page, which was started in 2013. There are 2,917 people following the site, which shares old photos and memories of Hatfield. The Society continues to publish the Hatfield High School Grad Gazette newsletter 3 times a year, which is much appreciated by the 362 people who receive it. We thank members John Wireman and John Stevens for the time that they spent auditing the 2020 books and records of the treasurer in 2021, and everything was found to be in order. During 2021, we sadly bid farewell to 6 society members: Gail Water, Charter member Shirley Wireman-Finnemeyer, Ronald Gottschall, Donald R. Cressman, Ethel Stoneback Heffelfinger, and Richard C. Lewis. The Society was finally able to remove the last few items from storage and bring them to the museum in 2021. We are so very grateful to Howard Heckler for providing the much-needed garage storage space for the Society for so many years. We also acknowledge with gratitude Hatfield Township for cutting the grass at the museum property and Hatfield Borough for the snow removal in the winter. Respectfully submitted by the Board of Directors, Larry Stevens, President, Bob Kaler, Vice President, Shirley Culp, Secretary, myself, Treasurer, Frank D. Maria, Ellen Culp, and Greg Schisler.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
All right, just 2 other announcements. I want to report that the books and records of the treasurer for the year 2021, as you heard in the report, were audited in 2021 by auditors John Wireman and John Stevens, and everything found to be in order. And all the records of the Society, such as the minutes and financial records, are available to its members on request at any time throughout the year. So if there's anything you want to know about the Society, just let us know. Is there any other business? I didn't think so. Okay, with that, we're adjourned. See, that wasn't so bad. And just a few general announcements before the program. The next community program is scheduled for Tuesday, March 22nd, when I will be presenting this year's edition of This and That, an eclectic look at Hatfield history. So put March 22nd on your calendars and plan to join us. Those who are able, if you could, please help us by folding up the chairs at the end of the night. And please join me in thanking Debbie Stevens, Nancy France, and Shirley Culp for providing this evening's refreshments. Thank you, ladies. All right, we'll get into the program. If you would out in the lights, please. Thank you. Alrighty. This evening's program is titled Postcards from the Past. Today, excuse me, taking pictures is quite easy for almost anyone. Most of us have cell phones, so we always have a high-quality camera with us most of the time. Gone are the days when we would say, I wish I had brought my camera so that I could take a picture of that. And it's so simple. Just point and click, and you have captured an image that you can enjoy immediately. Unfortunately, though, it will probably never get printed on paper. So with taking photos being so easy for us, it's easy also to forget that photography wasn't always that easy. I like this photo from the second half of the 1800s because someone had the foresight back then to go to the trouble of capturing for posterity what photographers' setup was like at that time. This picture shows a photographer at work in the foreground while his assistant in the background prepares to process a negative plate in his portable darkroom. Up until 1900, photography was an expensive, cumbersome, and complicated process, available mostly only to the well-to-do. Then in 1900, the Eastman Kodak Company introduced a low-priced point-and-shoot handheld camera called the Brownie. The Brownie camera, simple enough for even children to use, was designed, priced, and marketed to have wide appeal. It made photography accessible to the masses. The camera took only black and white photos, but with its simple controls and initial price of $1, That's the equivalent of $33 today. It was still very popular. Then in 1903, Kodak introduced the 3A folding Brownie camera, its first postcard camera. The postcard cameras had negatives that were the same size as the standard United States postcard, so they could be printed directly onto Kodak's pre-printed postcard paper without concern for cropping the image. This kept everything direct and simple for the photographer. This technology allowed photographers to travel from town to town and document all aspects of life in the places that they visited. And local entrepreneurs would hire them to record area events and the homes and businesses of prominent citizens. This photo shows the wagon of Percy traveling photographer A.R. Housekeeper. Real photo postcards, as they are known today, became expressions of pride in home and community, and were often sold as souvenirs in local drugstores and general stores. People enjoyed collecting them and sending them to friends and relatives, sharing small glimpses of their hometowns with others. And as you will see tonight, much of what we know about what Hatfield looked like in the early 1900s is thanks to over 100 of these real photo postcards. And a side note, take special notice of oil lamp streetlights and telephone poles in these photos, and I'll explain why a little later. Our first postcard tonight shows East Broad Street as seen from the railroad station property on Market Street. This photo, taken around 1906, shows Knipes Hotel on the left and Detweiler's store on the right. Only when this picture was taken, the store was owned by Chauncey J. Buckley. You can't see it here, but looking at the postcard with a magnifying glass, you could make out that the sign on the store reads C.J. Buckley's Consolidated Store, Hatfield, PA. So that helps us date the photo because Buckley sold the store to Isaac Detweiler early in 1908. Notice the caravan of 3 horse-pulled wagons traveling up Broad Street in the center of the picture. So it looks like this picture was taken during rush hour. Here's another postcard from 1906, also taken from the railroad property, showing part of Buckley's store on the left. Buckley's teenage son wrote on this postcard indicating, "These buildings are where I live and work. Will go to college in fall. C. Jerome Buckley." The house on the right was at this time the home of Dr. Titus Albright, who conducted his medical practice next door to the general store from about 1887 until the time of his death in 1908 at the age of 47. This postcard from around the same year shows the George S. Snyder Mills as seen from the train station property. George S. Snyder actually started his business in South Hatfield in 1884, mainly as a grain and feed dealer. 3 years later, in 1887, he expanded his business by purchasing a competing feed business at this location on Market Street and adding coal, hay, and lumber to his product line. This postcard shows the original Hatfield train station around 1908. The station stood here until it was destroyed by a mysterious fire in 1913. And you can see Dr. Albright's house in the background on the right and Knipes Hotel in the background on the left. This is the new brick Hatfield train station built in 1913 to replace the original wood frame station that was destroyed by fire. This postcard suffered a bit of damage at some point in the last 100 years, but it's still a nice photo of the station. But here's an even nicer postcard of the new station. You can see folks posing for the photo both in front of the station and on the steam locomotive. And the George S. Snyder Mansion is visible on the left. This postcard shows 3 railroad employees. The gentleman on the right is Wayne Coffle, brother of Hatfield's Jesse Coffle. Hatfield longtimers may remember Jesse Coffle, who lived on South Main Street for many years. Unfortunately, the other 2 gentlemen remain nameless. Jumping across to the other side of the tracks, known to some many years ago as the wrong side of the tracks, we have a few postcards showing what Maple Avenue looked like back around 1906. This is looking towards Union Street, taken from the area of the railroad property. And here the photographer turned to face the other direction. The houses seen here are the ones on the left side of Maple Avenue as you are approaching the curve. This postcard shows a view of Maple Avenue from down at the other end, taken from around Roosevelt Avenue and looking towards the railroad property and the Maple Avenue curve. This postcard shows the house at the corner of Maple Avenue and Roosevelt Boulevard, which was the home of Mr. and Mrs. Norman Dinger in the early 1900s. That's their children, George and Helen Dinger, sitting there on the front porch. And I'm sure that some of you long-timers will remember Helen Dinger Wolf. Going around the corner to Union Street, this postcard photo was taken from just below Penn Street. The new firehouse would be on your left, and that is where North Market Street goes back to the Hat House Apartments. The quality of this postcard is not so good since it was reproduced from an old newspaper photo, but it's still a great picture because it's the only one that exists that shows the trolley stop building when it was located on Lincoln Avenue on the George S. Snyder property. That's Lincoln Avenue there in the front, and the Snyder mansion would be off the picture to the left a bit. Now, at the time this photo was taken, around 1908, the building wasn't yet the trolley station. After George Snyder had this building built in 1903, he leased it to Mr. Addison, the owner of the Hatfield Printery, which printed the Hatfield Times newspaper. And this is a picture of the inside of the printery at that time. And those of you who are familiar with the inside of the trolley stop building should be able to recognize it. That corner where Mr. Clinton Addison is sitting is where the lottery office used to be for many years. In 1913, the Lehigh Valley Transit Company, who operated the trolley line through Hatfield, decided to relocate its tracks, taking them off of the borough streets to improve safety, as well as to eliminate the many bends in the route, which slowed down the trolley cars. This postcard would be from around 1913, right after the trolley company purchased the Hatfield Printery building from George Snyder and moved it to East Broad Street to use as the trolley station. Mr. Clinton Addison, owner of the Hatfield Printery at that time, quickly bought a small lot from Chester Knight on East Lincoln Avenue, just west of the creek, on which he constructed a new building to house his printing business, as seen on this picture postcard. And notice that the trolley tracks are still running down Lincoln Avenue in front of the printery. This photo was apparently taken shortly before the old tracks were removed. This postcard shows the brand new Hatfield Post Office building, which was built at the corner of Broad and Cherry Street. This is an interesting postcard for a couple of reasons. First, this postcard was one of just a few that was published by Isaac C. Detweiler from 1908 to around 1910. I.C. Detweiler owned the general store business located at Broad and Market Streets. He and his family operated the store from 1908 until 1970. Detweiler apparently took some of his favorite photographs of Hatfield and sent them to Germany for hand colorization and printing. At that time, Germany was a world leader in quality color lithography. There's also an interesting story behind this postcard. As you may recall from previous programs, Mr. Jonas S. Moyer was a prominent Hatfield Borough citizen in the town's early formative years. He had worked for Dillman Culp, owner of the Hatfield Printery in the early 1890s, as editor of the Hatfield Invincible newspaper. He eventually purchased the printery business and moved it into the second floor of his barn behind the house at Broad and Main Street, where the Housemans now live, formerly Dick Lewis's place. This is the only photo that we have in our collection of Jonas Moyer, and it shows him in his Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company parade uniform around 1913. He was a charter member of the fire company and served as its president for 17 years. In 1908, Jonas Moyer built a two-story frame house on land that he owned at the corner of Broad and Cherry Streets, and then he moved his printery into the second floor of the building, and that's his new building there on the right. This photo of East Broad Street was probably taken soon after Moyer finished construction of this house in 1898. It looks like perhaps it was late winter, so it is even possible that this photo was taken in the early months of 1898, even before Hatfield Borough was incorporated in June of that year. As you can see, Broad Street was still pretty rough, but it wouldn't be long before the new borough would do street improvements and sidewalks would be installed in the new town. Mr. Moyer sold the printery business to Mr. Addison in 1903, and as previously mentioned, Mr. Addison moved the business into George Snyder's new building on Lincoln Avenue. Soon after, Mr. Moyer started a fence factory and foundry business on Cherry Street, right behind his new building, with his business offices located in this new house. Mr. Moyer was an ambitious man, and in 1908 was appointed to serve as Hatfield's postmaster. As I understand it, he had intended to move the post office from Detweiler's store into this house towards the end of April 1908. But unfortunately, on April 13, 1908, a fire broke out in Moyer's fence factory on Cherry Street. The factory building, being of wood construction, was soon a mass of flames. The fire soon spread to Moyer's two-story frame building on Broad Street, which also burned to the ground. The Hatfield Times reported that, quote, "At one time it looked as if the entire corner of Broad and Market was doomed, but fortunately the wind was driving the flames in a direction that was not built up. The Zepp Bakery property across the alleyway from the burned foundry, meaning across Cherry Street, was badly scorched, and only by the aid of a bucket brigade was it saved," end quote. The Hatfield Fire Company was not formed yet at this time, so the Lansdale Fire Company was summoned. Now you can imagine how long it would take for a horse-drawn piece of firefighting apparatus to get from Lansdale to Hatfield over the rough roads of that time. We don't know exactly how long it took, but reports say that the fire had burned itself out by the time that they arrived. So that gives you some idea. It was probably this terrible fire that was the impetus for the formation of the Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company 2 years later. In less than 2 months, Jonas Moyer quickly built the new brick building that you see here at the corner of Broad and Cherry Street. The June 8, 1908 edition of the Hatfield Times reported, quote, "Mail and post office supplies were removed from Detweiler's store to the new post office building, which the present postmaster had built for the purpose. The new building is brick, and the interior is finished in stained woods and the walls plastered in tinted colors. The post office fixtures are of the latest patterns, including combination lock boxes. As a whole, it makes a very neat and attractive appearance," end quote. So less than 2 months after the fire, Moyer had this new building completely finished. Seems like some things actually moved a bit faster back then. As you can see, the post office occupied the right side of the building, and soon Moyer's fence factory office would occupy the left side. In the background on the left, you can see that a new brick foundry building is under construction by Mr. Moyer, and that building still stands today back on Cherry Street. Now, some of the postcards in our collection are used, and some are unused, and some have been used. This next one was used. It was sent on July 7th, 1911, to Walter Kriebel, who was in Mauchunk, now known as Jim Thorpe. It says, "Oh, you monkey chunk." This was apparently a term of endearment for someone living in Mauchunk. "Why didn't you come to Schuylkill last Sunday? We went through there to the Likens Mountains over the 4th of July. My, it was hot." And it is signed by Evelyn, Madeline, and Irene. Evelyn, Madeline, and Irene were Hatfield's infamous Swartley triplets, seen in this postcard. Now, the triplets would have just turned 9 years old when that postcard was written, so my guess is that their mother, Irene, probably wrote the inscription. And you can see, you can't see. There you can see. You can see on the back, on the back left, that this was another postcard from the I.C. Detweiler collection printed in Germany. Back to Jonas Moyer's new post office building. This photo was probably taken later in 1908, and you can see that Moyer now has his fence factory office set up on the left side of the building with samples of his fencing there on the landing. And he has also rebuilt the 2-story double house by this time, only now it was made of fireproof brick. Unlike today, the post office moved around a lot back in the first half of the 20th century, depending on who was appointed postmaster. In 1914, the post office was moved from the Broad and Cherry Street building to a new building on Lincoln Avenue, right next to the Heidelberg Church, as seen in this postcard. Jacob Hollenbach, standing there in the center, had been appointed postmaster that year. It will come as no surprise that this postcard was also from the I.C. Detweiler series. It shows, of course, Detweiler's store at the corner of Broad and Market Street in the early 1900s. And here's a colorized version of the same postcard. Here's another postcard from the I.C. Detweiler series. This one probably from 1908, shows East Broad Street as viewed from Market Street. With the new sidewalks, it's quite a change from our previous view of this street. Again, this is what it looked like around 1898, right? And in 1908. Quite an improvement in 10 years. Notice the numerous horse hitching posts on the right side. We have a metal hitching post just like that from up further on Broad Street in the museum collection, and the only Hatfield metal horse hitching post known to exist. Notice also the oil lamp street light. The borough had approximately 25 oil lamps illuminating the town's streets, and paid someone to light and extinguish the lamps and to keep them clean. And you may recall that it was a conflict over street lighting that actually led to Hatfield Borough being formed. Now here's a colorized postcard of the same view. Now this has opened up quite a mystery. there's a subtle difference between the black and white and the colorized version. Here again is the black and white and the color. Anyone see the difference? The black and white has no telephone poles, and the color does. Now this is very odd. At one time, it was thought that the black and white photo was taken when there were no poles, and that they were added in the colorized version in an effort to make this small town look more progressive. But then it was noticed that telephone poles were indeed visible in many other photos from this time, so the poles were apparently removed from the black and white version, but kept on the colorized version. Very peculiar and quite an annoying mystery to me. Here's another postcard mailed by young C. Jerome Buckley in 1906, showing off some of the houses in his hometown. These homes are on East Broad Street. This postcard also shows East Broad Street, only this one is viewed from Main Street. That's Jonas Moyer's residence on the corner of Broad and Main at the far left, mostly obscured by trees. Remember, he owned a fence factory, so he had top-of-the-line fencing around his house. And it looks like maybe he gave his neighbors a good deal on fencing, too. Now, this photo is not real sharp, and maybe the photographer realized his error because we have a second photo of the same area and from a slightly different angle, which is a lot sharper. In this photo, we can see the front of Jonas Moyer's house, and notice at this time that the house did not have the wraparound porch that it has today. Also notice another oil lamp streetlight on the corner. We know that this photo predates the fire of April 1908 because Moyer's frame building down at Broad and Cherry Streets is still standing in the background. And those poles you see along the street would be telephone poles since electricity didn't come to the borough until December of 1908. Here's another view from Broad and Main Street only a few years later, maybe around 1911. We know this because, although it's quite difficult for you to see, a close look reveals that the twin textile buildings on both sides of the creek have been built, and that happened in 1908 and 1910. Notice the field on the right side, on the right corner, where the Hatfield National Bank will be built in 1935. And also notice the oil lamp streetlight is now gone from the corner. Oh, there's the textile buildings way in the background there. When Hatfield Borough was incorporated in 1898, there were already a few small family textile businesses operating in the town. But it was the construction of this building in 1908 on East Broad Street, on the west side of the Little Neshaminy Creek, that marked the beginning of the borough growing into a true textile town. It was the Excelsior Underwear Company that began operations here in this new building in October 1908. In 1910, a twin building was constructed across the creek, which became the home of the Townsend Textile Manufacturing Company, a maker of all types of lace. Why the bridge connecting the two businesses was built is a mystery, but it must have been of some benefit to both businesses to go to the expense of building it. It is believed that the bridge was constructed shortly after the second building was built in 1910. It seems also, however, that the bridge was very temporary. It appears that it was removed by 1914. In 1953, the Hanson Company, by then the owner of both buildings, constructed a two-story bridge connecting the second and third floors of the buildings. Now, some of these postcard images are not that great because we don't have the original postcard. I will sometimes see these postcards on internet auction sites, but unfortunately, I don't always win every auction. but I do copy the images from the auction site so that I will have them for reference. And sometimes the internet image is not all that great, which is the case with this postcard. It again shows the new twin textile factory buildings on both sides of the creek. Going up the road again, this postcard shows West Broad Street as viewed from Main Street. That's the original Grace Lutheran Church building there on the right. This postcard shows pretty much the same view, just a little further up Broad Street. And a postcard showing pretty much the same area, probably a few years later. And here's a nice postcard showing the original Grace Lutheran Church building, which was finished in 1905. Traveling up the road a little farther, this postcard shows the section of West Broad Street near Columbia Avenue, heading out of town. Moving back to East Lincoln Avenue, this postcard shows the Heidelberg Reformed Church, which was built in 1902. Unfortunately, largely obscured by all the trees. Down the street at the end of East Lincoln Avenue, this postcard shows the George S. Snyder Mansion around 1908. George Snyder built his dream home in 1897, but sadly he died just 13 years later on January 12, 1911, at the age of 55. Taking a look at postcards of South Main Street, I almost didn't include this one because of the poor quality, but I decided to use it anyway. It is a copy of a postcard that was printed in an old newspaper. Taken around 1909, it shows South Main Street as seen from the intersection with Broad Street. And you can again see the vacant lot where the Hatfield National Bank will be built. Here's a much better photo of a very similar view from around 1909. It is also another postcard from the I.C. Detweiler series. The Borough School building is seen on the right, and a couple of young boys are enjoying a stroll down the sidewalk. Notice also that, like one of the other postcards from I.C. Detweiler, this one shows no utility poles, unlike this colorized version of the same scene. This postcard from around 1906 shows the Borough School at Main Street and Lincoln Avenue. The school was originally a one-room schoolhouse built in 1885 for the children living in the densely populated center of Hatfield Township. This was 13 years prior to the formation of Hatfield Borough. In 1892, a second floor was added, making it a two-room schoolhouse, and by around 1900, the number of Borough's children necessitated the construction of a two-story addition to the school, making it a four-room schoolhouse. Here's another postcard of the school from around 1906. An early 1900s newspaper article said of the school, quote, "It contains 4 rooms, large hallways, and basement, all of which are well adapted for school purposes such as pertains to light, heat, and ventilation. The location is one of the finest in the borough and practically in the center of the town. Total number of students enrolled, 139. End quote. This postcard shows Main Street at Lincoln Avenue. As a trolley car makes the turn from Main Street onto Lincoln Avenue, squeezing by a horse-pulled wagon loaded full of hay. And that's Emmanuel Church on the right, and this would have been around 1908 before the trolley tracks were relocated to take them off of the borough streets. This photo postcard, taken around the same time, appears to document an impending disaster as the trolley car makes its turn from Lincoln Avenue to head south on Main Street. But I trust that all ended well for this woman crossing the intersection. I believe that the trolley was actually stopped, and it is just the way the tracks are banked at the curb that gives the illusion that it is moving. The building is now where Dr. Jaffe has his office. And here's another postcard of the same building without the trolley blocking our view. On the back of this postcard was a rather interesting message. Why did you tell me you would come up Sunday evening if you did not wish to come? I was looking for you and had a Christmas present for you. I wish you would come up and get it, and don't act so strange. Come up this evening. I was looking for you until 9 o'clock. And it's signed by Jenny. Now remember, this was before home delivery of mail, so everyone had to go to the post office to pick up their mail. And since there's no postage or address on this postcard, I'm guessing that Jenny just took it to the post office and asked the friendly postal clerk to place it in her friend's mail slot. Try doing that today. And here's the same building a few years later. This postcard shows Harry Frankenfield's general store there on the corner of Main Street and Lincoln Avenue. Harry Frankenfield operated his store that he called the Central Store from 1910 to 1920. And this photo was probably taken in 1910 when he first opened. Notice that the red brick appears to all have been painted white by this time. That horse and wagon standing in the front there is the store's delivery wagon, and a close look reveals that the lettering on the side reads Harry Frankenfield, Dealer in General Merchandise, Hatfield, PA. And another postcard of Harry Frankenfield's General Merchandise store from around the same time. This 1908 postcard shows the other corner of Main Street and Lincoln Avenue, where Franconia Auto now stands. This beautiful house, with its large wraparound porch, was built in 1905 and was the home of Levi Kratz. Although the photographer captioned this postcard as North Main Street, it is actually a view of South Main Street, taken from Lincoln Avenue, looking south towards the railroad. All of these buildings are still there, except for the Stern House at the far right. You can see the trolley tracks running up the middle of the road. And the quality of this circa 1908 photo isn't the greatest, but I think you can see that most of the street was lined with rather new cement sidewalks, except for in front of the Stern property and in front of the Emmanuel Church, which had a brick sidewalk. And that brick sidewalk lasted until the 1980s. But by then it was just a narrow brick path overgrown by grass. And some long-timers may remember that section of brick sidewalk. I know I do, and I know Gary and Janet, I'm sure you do. I lost my clicker. Let's try this again. Let's see. There we go. Okay, there's where the brick sidewalk was. We're back. This postcard shows the same area, only the other side of the street. That's 113 and 115 South Main Street, the twin in the middle of the block between Lincoln and Poplar. The Maple Avenue Dinger family, mentioned earlier, moved here to this building in 1919. This postcard is also probably from around 1908 and shows the area of Main and Poplar Street. That's Main Street going across the bottom of the picture. The fenced-in garden area there is where the former Tranquility Life Spa building now is, right at the corner of Main and Poplar Street. That would be Poplar Street there. The home on the left is where the Kim family has lived for many years, and the front twin on the right is Shirley Leicester's former home. Name's familiar, I'm sure, to some Hatfield long-timers. Another postcard of the same area showing the same houses. And I love the very ornamental iron fence on the right side of the photo from Jonas Moyer's Fence Factory, no doubt. And right above the fence, you can see another one of the borough's oil lamp streetlights. And if you look real carefully, you might be able to make out a couple of young children sitting just to the right of the telephone pole, posing for the camera, and a couple of girls strolling down the sidewalk at the right. Moving down the road a little bit, this postcard, of course, shows the main hotel. At this time, around 1914, Jesse Schlotterer was the owner of the hotel, which was at that time known as the Keystone House. And we can see that by this time, the trolley tracks had been relocated to move them off of the street and now ran parallel to the railroad tracks, which you could see at the bottom of the picture. A good-sized group of men enjoyed posing for this shot. For this picture, probably taken at the same time as the previous photo, the photographer stood right in the middle of Main Street at the railroad crossing, looking north towards Broad Street. Then he turned around and took this picture of Main Street looking towards Vine Street. And a young boy is seen pulling his wagon down the road. This section of town was commonly known as South Hatfield. Here's a circa 1908 photo postcard showing the William Morris Canning Factory, which was located on Chestnut Street in South Hatfield. Chestnut Street is that little road just next to the railroad crossing at Main Street where the borough office now is. The Morris Cannery, which was started in 1906, canned tomatoes, Green's famous catsup, apples, baked beans, and sauerkraut. And apparently, it got quite unpleasant in the area when they were canning sauerkraut because residents were warned ahead of time to keep their windows closed. A fire sparked by a passing train destroyed the canning factory on April 21st, 1913. Incidentally, this postcard is the earliest photo documenting the aftermath of a fire in Hatfield. And it's also the only fire to which the Young Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company responded to using a horse to pull their firefighting apparatus. And remember when I said earlier that George Snyder started his grain and feed business in South Hatfield? That business there on the left is where it all started. The cannery was never rebuilt, and the land was purchased a couple of years later, around 1915, by Hatfield Borough. The borough soon built a pump house on the property and a distribution system around town to provide it with safe, clean water. 15 years later, the borough constructed this electric plant on the property, and on July 6, 1931, the new diesel engines were started up and the borough began supplying its own electric current to its residents. The building back behind the electric plant is the pump house for the public water system. Both the pump house and the electric plant were demolished in 2000, and the site is now home to Electric Plant Park. A little bit further down Chestnut Street, this postcard shows the Chestnut Street Bridge as it appeared around 1908. The bridge crosses over the Little Neshaminy Creek, as it was known back then, and this view of the bridge is looking north towards Lincoln Avenue. The railroad bed is barely discernible at the center left. In a note of interest, the stone bridge abutments seen in this photo are still in use today, although recent storms have taken their toll on them. And the borough is currently working with their engineer to come up with a solution to fix and preserve them. Close by, this postcard shows steam engine 403 crossing the railroad bridge, which is a short distance north of the Main Street crossing over the Little Neshaminy Creek. Here we are back on Main Street and moving further down into South Hatfield, approaching Vine Street. That's the South Hatfield store building, commonly known as Bean's Store, which is located on the southwest corner of Main and Vine Street. There's another postcard showing the South Hatfield store building on the left and the Hatfield Funeral Home on the right. The South Hatfield store building, built around 1827, is the oldest structure in Hatfield Borough. Written on the face of this postcard is, "This is where I live. The little fellow on the steps is my daddy." Well, the fellow on the steps is Joseph B. Anders, the owner of the building and store business at that time. The daddy in quotes leads me to think that it was written by one of his stepdaughters. All the buildings in this photo are still standing. This is the same area of South Main Street only a few years later. That's Beans with the long porch with the funeral home right behind it. This 1906 postcard shows the house at Main and Vine Street, right across Main Street from Beans. And I particularly like all the architectural gingerbread on this house. And notice also the oil lamp streetlights on both corners. Traveling down East Vine Street, this June 1907 postcard shows the steel construction county bridge built in 1893 crossing over the Little Neshaminy Creek. The note on this postcard reads, "Yours received are very much appreciated. This is one of our dear shots, Louise." So apparently Louise was exchanging these photo postcards with a friend of hers. Another postcard of the East Vine Street Bridge, possibly taken in the fall of 1907. It looks like the man seen there is doing a bit of fishing. This 1908 postcard is showing a property on East Vine Street on the left right before the bridge. Ruth Boyer West related to me that there used to be a small private park there. And it's interesting to note that up until about 10 years ago, those concrete steps next to the man and horse, as well as the concrete footings for one of those pillars, was still present. When the new house was built there recently, they were both removed. Where the girls in the carriage are, that driveway now leads back to the Outback Apartments. And handwriting on the back of this postcard indicates that the girls in the carriage are Gertrude and Georgiana Conver. On the back of another copy of this postcard is a note from Annie to Mr. John Purdy in Philadelphia saying, "You should see me now. I weigh close to 300 pounds, more or less." That's an interesting note. Don't know who Annie was. Moving over to West Vine Street, this postcard from around 1910 shows the first houses on the left after you cross the railroad tracks. And by the way, those are trolley tracks there in this picture. The first house there on the left was torn down some time ago and is where Diddens put some new greenhouses. And the second house was more recently destroyed by fire, and a new modular home is now on that site. Back onto Main Street again and down Cowpath Road to just south of Orvilla Road, this 1910 postcard shows the German Baptist Brethren Church, now the Hatfield Church of the Brethren. That's Cowpath Road running through the front of the picture. The church building seen here was constructed in 1867, and it ran perpendicular to Cowpath Road. It looks like maybe they were having a tent meeting at the time of this photo. This picture postcard taken at the same time, but a lot sharper, shows the other side of the 1867 Brethren Church building. After much debate, the Dunkers, as they were called, razed their 1867 building and built this new structure in 1928. The German Baptists were often referred to as the Dunkers by outsiders because they fully immersed or dunked their baptismal candidates in nearby streams. 3 complete dunkings. A particular method of baptism that completely distinguishes them from the sprinkling Lutherans and Methodists, their kindred pouring Mennonites, and even the single dunk Baptists. This new building was built parallel to the Cowpath Road. Church growth and a need for more space resulted in the construction of additions to both ends of the building, which were completed in 1953, as seen in this postcard photo. Here's a nice postcard from the village of Orvilla in Hatfield Township. I only wish we knew more about it. The back reads simply, "Happy Days on the Farm at Orvilla, PA." Unfortunately, without any name, it's impossible to know where in Hatfield Township this photo might have been taken, but it's still a neat picture. This 1910 postcard photo shows Theodore R. Hartzell's general store in the tiny village of Calmer over on the Bethlehem Pike. The building now houses the Calmer Post Office. And this postcard shows the Calmer Creamery located on Bethlehem Pike just south of Broad Street. The Calmer Creamery, established around 1884, is the oldest known creamery in Hatfield. A creamery was a place where farmers could take their milk to be processed and marketed. It appears that the building in the foreground was an ice house with the ice elevator at the edge of the pond to lift the ice into the ice house. The ice was stored for use to preserve the creamery products in warmer weather. Traveling up Bethlehem Pike to just north over the railroad tracks, this postcard photo, I believe, is looking north on the pike toward Walnut Street. It's hard to be certain since the trees obscure the homes on the left too much to positively identify them, but I think that the man that took this photo was probably the same one that took this one, and I'm certain that this one is looking north towards Walnut Street. The first house on the left is located on the south side of Walnut Street, and the second house is on the north side of Walnut Street, the building that has been home to Catherine Carver Chocolates for so many years. And I would guess that, like most of the photo postcards, this postcard was also taken around 1908. Notice how rustic Bethlehem Pike was at that time. And this photo from a number of years later shows the same houses, and you can see that sidewalks have been installed in the village, and the Bethlehem Pike looks a bit better maintained. Traveling north a bit further to the small village of Treewigtown, this postcard shows the students of the one-room Treewigtown schoolhouse posing for a photograph around 1910. The school, built around 1878, is now a part of the North Penn Elks building on Treewigtown Road. The village of Treewigtown, unlike the villages of Calmer and the village of Line Lexington, a short distance north, did not have a post office and the village eventually lost its identity with only a road bearing its name to keep it from being completely forgotten. Continuing north on Bethlehem Pike, we come to the little village of Lexington. This postcard from around 1910 shows the Eagle Hotel, which was located on the northeast corner of Bethlehem and Hilltown Pikes. It is said that because of its unique location, the boundaries of 3 townships converged at a point within the building. It was said that the hotel proprietor slept in New Britain Township, and while standing behind the bar in Hilltown Township, served drinks to thirsty customers in Hatfield Township. And whether this is true or not, I'm not so sure, but it definitely makes for a nice story. On a side note, you may often see trees in old photographs with their trunks whitewashed, as you see there. This was apparently done in the fall to protect trees from sun scald and heat stress during the winter months. Heat stress occurred from extremes in temperature when the sun would warm the trunk during the day and then get very cold at night. If a tree experienced sun scald and heat stress, the trunk could crack, making the tree more susceptible to bacteria and pest infiltration. The whitewash helped reflect the sun's rays during the day, keeping it cooler and reducing the temperature extremes to the tree. So now you know about whitewashing trees. You never know what you're going to learn at these programs. Here's another view of the Eagle Hotel there on the right. This is looking down Bethlehem Pike towards its intersection with Bethlehem Pike. Continuing north even farther on the Bethlehem Pike, we come to a small village that was first known as Hockertown and then later as Unionville. This was another village that lost its identity and just became another part of Hatfield Township. This postcard from around 1910 shows the Hotel Unionville located on the southern corner of Unionville Pike and Bethlehem Pike. And you can see there some more whitewashed trees. This postcard photo from around 1905 is a bit of a mystery. We have in our collection a photo from the same time frame of a covered bridge identified as the Unionville Bridge, a quarter-mile south of Unionville Pike. So where this bridge may have been is a total mystery to me, and I really don't like that. Now, that wasn't that long of a bridge. Yeah. Not sure. It's interesting that has 3 different arches on it. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe someday. Looking across the Bethlehem Pike, and yes, I know it's in Bucks County, but since a photographer put the name Hatfield on the postcard, that's excuse enough for me to use it. This is the former Eastern Mennonite Convalescent Home, which was established in 1942. And I imagine this photo is from that same year. Later, the home was known as the Hatfield Mennonite Home, and now Dock Meadows. This is the youngest postcard in tonight's presentation, dating back only to around 1960, and it shows the inside of Kermit Bean's Carriage House Restaurant and Lounge, most recently the Century House Restaurant. And if any of you frequented the Century House, you might recognize the rooms shown there. And there's the back of the postcard. Coming back to Hatfield Borough, We have a few postcards from the 1920s. This 1925 postcard shows the Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company's newly constructed firehouse on East Broad Street. And from about the same time, this postcard shows Market Street with I.C. Detweiler's store on the left and Dr. Albright's former home in the center. Here's a nice postcard of Horace Inky Davis's building on Broad Street, right next to the trolley station. The building was only a few years old when this photo was taken, having been built in 1922. It's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. Happy birthday, Inkies. A message on the back of the postcard indicates that Mary must have enjoyed her visit to Inky's restaurant. She wrote to Anne, "Do you like tomato soup? Had a delicious one here Monday." Here's a postcard of the new Hatfield Borough and Township Joint Consolidated School Building, which was completed in 1922. All children in the borough and township, grades 1 through 12, went to school in this building. It continued as a public school until 1970 and then became the Biblical School of Theology, later known simply as Biblical Seminary. The seminary moved to Philadelphia in January 2019, and the building has been sitting vacant since, awaiting a new owner. This postcard shows the Trolley Bridge, known as Gaiman's Trestle, straddling the Hatfield-Franconia Township line. The concrete bridge abutments at each end of the trolley bridge are still there, out on both sides of Township Line Road, between Hatfield-Sowerton Pike and Cowpath Road. I haven't heard if they will be removed when the road is improved as part of the 309 Connector project, but I hope not. I think it's nice to have those pieces of trolley history still standing over 70 years after the trolley service was discontinued. Here's an unusual postcard with 3 different views of Hatfield: the Consolidated School, Detweiler's General Store, and the Hatfield train station. And I'm guessing that this may have been from around the late 1940s. If you're on Facebook, you may have seen us post this postcard recently. It's another of those annoying mystery photos. Why did someone decide to capture this nondescript image somewhere in Hatfield? There's nothing to give us a clue as to where it was taken, but it must have been important to someone at the time. And my guess is perhaps it documents a first land purchase where a future homestead would be built. But we'll probably never know for sure. I really dislike mystery photos. There's no mystery about this 1956 postcard. It shows the Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company's new 1956 Seagraves pumper, which went on to serve the community until 1983. So as you can see, real photo postcards of the early 1900s have played a very important role in documenting